Hi, everybody, and welcome to Chapter 10. We're talking all about pay for performance plans here. This is one of my favorite chapters to talk about all semester long because, again, this is a lot of what you'll see in any organization that you join. Pay per performance is a big part, especially if you go to any type of sales job, any type of job where you have to produce something, and even in jobs where you don't, even like a lawyer or an accountant or even a marketing professional, pay for performance plans are a huge part of our compensation and total reward strategy. So we really want to talk about it. So we're moving kind of away from entitlement toward pay that varies with performance. So, traditionally, whenever I'm guaranteed whatever I'm guaranteed because I hold a certain job title. Or, I'm a manager, therefore I get this. Or I'm a director, so I get this. We're kind of moving away from that and doing more, okay, yes, you have a title and a job description, but the more you produce and the better you perform, you're rewarded accordingly. So you've probably all heard the term merit pay, and that's kind of where pay per performance starts, is with merit pay. It's you get more based on how more you produce, and obviously the most obvious example is our sales jobs. The more you sell, the bigger percentage that you get based on that aspect. Professional athletes, obviously the better they perform in games, the better numbers, the more wins they have, they're going to get more merit pay as a result. So again, it's kind of the basis where we start. So here's kind of a way to look at merit pay, basically how much more you get based on performance. So if you're looking at a job evaluation, which we'll talk about a little more later, here's a great example. So let's say a company, as an individual, you're guaranteed every year a 5% increase in your pay, up to a 5%. So however much you get will depend on how well you did throughout the year, what goals you met, were you a good team member, how well did you interact with your fellow employees. So here's an example. So if you were well above average with everybody else, your performance rating is a 1 on a scale of 1 to 5, you'll get that full 5%. And then maybe if you're just average, if you're just kind of in the middle, maybe you'll get kind of a middle percentage, which is 3%. Well, if you're well below average, way down on that 5 scale, you may not even get anything because your performance was so unacceptable that you didn't get anything. And again, employees may, a lot of times it's kind of ironic that employees will complain about merit pay systems, about how they didn't get as much as they thought that they should have. But you don't see a lot of employees, or managers for that matter, complaining about the unfairness of merit pay because, again, it's tied directly to performance. The better I do, the more money I get. Where you get into issues with merit pay is it can be subjective by nature. So if I feel like I'm well above average, but my manager only grades me as below average, there could be some issues with my manager or some other issues that haven't been addressed. So there's something that we need to talk about to determine where can we close that gap. But merit pay is a big part of how we're determining pay per performance. And again, we've been talking about these individual incentive plans. Basically we're offering a promise of pay for some level of performance. We want to make sure that they're objective we compare the performance to the level of the incentive of the pay. So we're trying to determine what is the best method to determine how we're trying to accomplish this. So again, where you see this a lot is like in a piecemeal system. So if I work on a factory line, let's say I put a tailpipe on a car, for example. So for every tailpipe that I put on a car, I get paid a certain number, let's say $10, just to make that up. So if the more I put on the cars, the more money I make. So that's directly tied to performance. But we need some way to measure how we get that. And a lot of times when employees complain about these types of things, they don't understand, okay, if I'm going to make more money, how do I accomplish that? What is my manager holding me accountable to? What methods has the company created to determine how I'm going to get that money? So again, it's very important for companies to be really establish what that aspect is. So with individual plans, we also see a lot of team incentive plans. So if a marketing team is working on a new promotion for an ad agency, if the ad is successful and they bring in more business, then the team gets rewarded as a whole. Well, I'm sure each of you have probably either here in college or when you were in high school or some point in your career where you were part of a team that maybe you did all the work and one or two other team members just were there for the meetings, or maybe didn't even show up for the meetings. They just didn't do all the work and they put their name on the final product and they got the same credit that you did. And obviously that's not fair for a whole multitude of reasons. So with team incentive plans, we have to be real careful about that same contact. You know, teams vary. You know, some people are really shy and may not contribute much but do all the work on the back end. Others may be more talkative and really kind of keep the team going but are actually just trying to keep the motivation and maybe not be doing the actual work. So teams can vary. You know, and then different levels of the teams can be a problem. So obviously, if you're on a team with your director in your department, you know, your director, because they're the boss, they may expect you to do more of the work and then they maybe take the credit for it later on. It's a very, very common problem. So even the level you're at can create team issues. And things like complexity, control, and communications are all factors that play into that as well. Team incentive plans like stock option plans and, you know, employee motivation plans are becoming really popular, but again, you have to make sure that everybody on the team is more or less treated, you know, not necessarily equal, but at least equitably, and make sure that everybody's contributing equally. And again, a lot of what we've been talking about is designed for more, you know, short term. I produce a certain number of, new toys for a company. I'll get paid this certain amount. Well, again, in the short term, that's great. The more I do now, the more I'll get right then and there. But what about more long-term plans? You know, when we talk about long-term incentives, we talk about anything past 1 year. So what you'll see a lot is, you know, when the tech companies, you know, in the early part of the 2000s really started booming. A lot of those plans were designed, okay, if the company is still profitable 5 years from now, then we're going to give you a 1% ownership in the company, for example. That's just one example. But the point is, what companies are really trying to kind of do, like stock options, which I know a lot of you are aware of, as something to look at as far as this goes. Long-term incentives are, in theory, a wonderful idea. They're hard to sell to employees because, you know, a lot of employees will take a job and know, hey, I'm not going to be here 5 years from now. I'm using this job hopefully to get a better job in the future, or I know I'm only going to live in this city for the next 2 years, then I'm moving to a different city. So selling the idea of a long-term incentive can be difficult at times because, again, employees may have different motivations. So again, with this chapter, really focusing on the individual and the team aspect, as well as how do the two interact, but more importantly, what is your individual motivation for doing so? Thank you, everybody.